Our next session tonight is about the different types of evaluations. And Elizabeth Viljoen is going to facilitate this particular session. Now, just a bit about Elizabeth. Elizabeth is the current District 112 Club Retention Chair. She's responsible for retaining clubs. She leads the Club Coach Committee, whose goal is to develop action points to aid clubs. Her goal is for all clubs to thrive. Elizabeth was awarded the Division Director of the Year for 2023-2024. And tonight, Elizabeth will demonstrate the different types of evaluations and how to deliver them. So would you please help me welcome Elizabeth?
Thank you so much, Marlene. I want to do two things. Troy, if you can stop sharing the slides for a moment, please. And then we're slightly ahead of time. So what I want you all to do is to disable your video for a moment, like this, and then to get up and walk around your chair. We'll be back in a few seconds. There, and when you're back, please show us your video. Also, the people hiding. If you're hiding because you're in your pajamas, that's fine. You can grab a jacket like mine and quickly put it over that. If you're hiding just because we've been sharing slides and you thought, oh, well, you don't need to be here, then show your face because I'm going to ask a few questions right now. And some people are still walking around their chairs. Oh, there, you're all back. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to talk about a few types of evaluations. And Troy, I still don't want you to share the slides because I first want to ask the audience a few questions. What type of evaluations can you think of? You can either put up your hand and then I'll ask you, or you can type in the chat, whatever makes you comfortable. If you can think of evaluations, what type of evaluations can you think of? Oh, there, Karen. Oh, now you're typing too fast for me. Yes, the CRC method, 3-to-1 method. ABC, that's interesting, Tamara Matanga. And the 3 M's. Okay, I'm aware of CRC and 3-to-1. Tamara Matanga, could you quickly explain the ABC to us?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening, everyone. The ABC was around things that are awesome, areas to better yourself in, and the C is around challenging.
Oh, thank you so much. And Troy, the 3 M's, what are those about?
Thank you, Elizabeth. The 3 M's looks at mind, method, and manner. So 3 different aspects of a speech that we can all evaluate. The method it was presented, the manner they used while presenting, and then the mindfulness or the state as they go through it.
So interesting, different ways that people evaluate. Karen, can you maybe explain to people who may be new to Toastmasters about the CRC method, and then after that, the 3-to-1 method?
Thank you. The CRC stands for commend, recommend, and commend. Generally done in that order, so it's like a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
The 3-2-1 is something I used for the first time at my last club meeting. It's 3 commendations, 2 recommendations, and as I understand, the C being something, can't remember what it stands for, but it's something awesome that you're going to remember from the speech.
Wonderful. Those are such interesting ways of looking at evaluations. Now, I'm going to look at 3 different types of evaluations. Troy, I'll tell you when I want the slides up. It's a little bit later still. But the first thing that I'm going to discuss is that we get online evaluations and we get in-person evaluations. And those also differ slightly. Then the second thing that I've become aware of when I joined 1 Hour Toastmasters in Auckland is that you really have to be careful who you're evaluating. If you're evaluating someone who's doing an icebreaker, it will be completely different to someone who's preparing to do a speech contest, because your evaluation will change slightly. But also when you evaluate table topics, you don't use the CRC method because you want a quick and a fast evaluation. And then one of the things that I've learned at First Impressions, and that's where Talia and Melvin were members when I first came to New Zealand, is that you also look at the path and that you incorporate that into your evaluation. So your whole evaluation will be based on the path that someone is following. For instance, can you think how someone doing an engaging humor path, how their evaluations would differ from someone who's doing motivational strategies? Is there someone who can give me an idea how the two will differ? Put up your hand or put something in the chat and then we can ask about that. No one who can think about an idea. That means I just have to think about that idea. Oh, that's fantastic. So if someone is doing a speech on the engaging humor path, you will definitely look for the humor in their speech. If there's no humor, why are they doing the engaging humor path? And that's often a challenge that you can pose to someone doing their icebreaker speech and not engaging humor when they're on that path. They can pose a challenge to them. They can do that. But if someone is doing a visionary leadership path, then every speech they do on that path should be focused on their vision and how they see how they will incorporate that vision in their leadership path. So always ask for the path that someone's doing, and when you evaluate, then incorporate that also. But the most important thing I'm going to talk about is the difference between an online and a face-to-face evaluation, but also how they are very similar. And Troy, you can maybe now share the slide. There, and then the next page. Right, so now when you think about an evaluation, it's a whole package deal. You don't just come to the meeting and do an evaluation. Very often, a member will have a mentor. So beforehand, the member can sit with the mentor and think about the things that they can do in the speech, but they can also sit with the evaluator. So you communicate well with the evaluator beforehand. You can either meet with the speaker or you can send emails or texts, whatever works for you. You also send your paperwork well ahead of time so that the speaker will know what they are going to look for and evaluate. You give your details of the speech to the chair of the meeting, but also to the evaluator. And you communicate with the speaker as the evaluator. What do you want me to look for? When it's someone doing the icebreaker speech, they don't know what they want you to look for. They're too scared for that. But when someone is preparing to do a contest speech, they have very specific things that they want you to focus on. So you have to know those things beforehand. Now, when you do an online presentation, that's more or less the scope of what you do beforehand. But when you do a face-to-face evaluation, it would also be a good idea to sit next to each other during the meeting. Because that way you can communicate with hand gestures or facial expressions, a look in the eye, so that the evaluator can see how you respond to the other speakers or to other situations in the room also. Next slide, please. Troy, the next slide, please. Oh, no, I'm stuck, not you. Let me just quickly go on. So things that you will be looking for during the speech is, for instance, the speaking area. Now, we are all currently online, and our speaking area is the frame of the screen. Now, very often, people will sit down here at the bottom of the screen, and the whole top area will be open. So if you do an evaluation, you can tell them things like that they can use their screen. But when they do a face-to-face evaluation, you can make sure that they use the whole stage. Now, I was at a contest on Saturday where I realized, because we're not doing online judging anymore, the speaking area is so much wider. People can walk from the one side of the audience to the other side of the audience. So that also changed because we're not doing hybrid contests anymore. Other things that you can also evaluate is how people make eye contact. Now, when we do an online evaluation, the eye contact will not be with the people on this side of the screen, because then you lose eye contact with people. You have to focus on the camera in. But when you're in a room, you focus on people's faces. So that's a different thing that you can evaluate during afterwards during the evaluation. Other things that you can look for is props. Now, when we do an online evaluation, we can use the background as a prop. But we can also have other props that we have here. But then you also have to take into consideration that when you have a background, it can move out of the screen. So those are the things that you're going to evaluate when after the speech. When you're in the room, props are different. You can use a whole chair or a table or things that you bring along. You also have to evaluate the sound. For instance, when I speak online, if my voice disappears, if I'm too far from the computer, then you can recommend that. If you're in the room, you can evaluate how people's sound is projecting to the back of the room. I've been a Toastmaster for a while now, and I still get people who tell me that my voice do not project well enough to the back of the room. So those are some of the things that you can evaluate, and it will differ slightly depending whether it's online or face-to-face. Troy, the next slide, please. So there are a few tips that you can give beforehand, or you can evaluate it afterwards. When you are doing an online speech, you have to know where the timer is. So as an evaluator, you can tell the speaker beforehand, remember to pin the timekeeper, or have your own timer next to the computer. But also remind them in the room when they have face-to-face evaluations to know exactly where the timekeeper is and to keep their eye on it. An inexperienced speaker will often forget to look at the timekeeper. So that's a trick you can tell them beforehand, remember about that. And then notes. When you have notes online, very often people would put their notes down in front of them, and all you see of them the whole time is the top of their head. So you can give them a tip to either have their notes on the computer near the camera, or to have it propped up against the computer screen. While when it's face-to-face, they can have their notes on a lectern or in their hand, whichever works best for them, so that they can still use hand gestures and do not walk away from the audience all the time. Next slide, please. Okay, now we have talked about the CRC ratio beforehand, and Talia has also given you an excellent explanation and a breakdown of how to use the CRC method. I'm just quickly going to summarize some of those things. So when you start an evaluation, you give a very quick summary of what the speech was about. You connect it to the path of the speaker, but also to their experience level. Then the 3-2-1 method, you give commendations. Now, for someone doing an icebreaker, I wouldn't give too many commendations or recommendations, one at a time, because that's what they can process. But an experienced speaker, you can give them three commendations, things that they've done well, 2 recommendations, and they should be practical, the way that Talia explained, how they can improve, and examples. And then you can finish with a challenge, just one challenge, and then give a quick summary of everything that you've told them. So that's just a recap of what the previous speakers spoke about. Next slide, please. So we will also be looking at the overall visual effectiveness and the impact of the speaker, whether they are online or in person. Some of the things, and we all see that when we get the evaluation sheet. Now, I just want to know, with a show of hands, do you get an evaluation sheet every single time you give an evaluation? Or do you sometimes not get an evaluation sheet from the speaker? So if you always get one, show of hands, then put up your hand. The only hand up was the timekeeper. We do not always get, oh, Marlene, okay. We do not always get the evaluation sheet. The evaluation sheet is not only there to guide the speaker, it's also there to guide the evaluator. Things that you can look for, especially an unexperienced evaluator, can use that as a cheat sheet. But that's also the kind of things that we look for in Toastmasters. Very often, we do not want to evaluate the content of the speech, but we want to evaluate the way the speech was given. For a very experienced Toastmaster, we can also look at the content of their speech. So some of those things we will be looking for is vocal variety. Do you sometimes whisper? Do you sometimes shout? Those are things that takes a lot of nerves to be able to do. Body language, do they use their hand gestures, especially online? For an online presentation, it's so awkward, but you have to lift up your hands to be able to use them. Otherwise, you just use things and you can't really see what people are doing here at the bottom of the screen. So for an online presentation, you will tell people to use their body language in a different way. They can always stand up and get up, but then sometimes you can't hear their voice projection very well. While in a room, your body language presentation will be completely different. You can crawl into a ball and you can spring or jump. Sorry, I'm trying to translate this from Afrikaans. You can jump into the air. So there are various things that you can do in person that you cannot do online, and the evaluator can take that into consideration. Also, the delivery. Now, very often people are so stuck on their notes, especially today when we are doing a presentation online, that they don't focus on you. They're so focused on the presentation. That's why it's sometimes good to take the presentation away. Another thing that's really important is that this is a personal opinion. So you use words like what I felt, what I see. And it may differ from what someone else in the audience feels or what they see. And very often I find that I listen to evaluations and I disagree with what the evaluators say. But that's their opinion and it's a valid opinion. But the speaker can take that to heart, or they can decide to disregard that. It does not suit them or it does not help them. That's not the direction they want to develop in. But still, listening really well to an evaluation will help you to grow. Another thing that I often see in clubs is that they speak directly to you as the speaker. And they do not speak to the whole audience. They use third person. He or she or they did this instead of you did this. Now I want Troy to take the slide away again, and then I'll ask a few questions from the audience. I'll get back to that last slide later, Troy, but if you can maybe just take the slideshow off. Stop the slideshow there. Okay. Now I want you to put your hands up and answer this, or type in the chat, whatever works for you. Who benefits from an evaluation? Who do you think benefits from an evaluation? Karen.
Trying to use my keyboard there. Everybody in the room.
Everybody in the room.
Mm.
So how do you as an evaluator benefit from an evaluation? And you're welcome to answer that, Karen, while you're unmuted.
Having processed somebody else's speech can help you process your own speaking ability.
Yes, very well. Or someone else, how do you as an evaluator benefit from the evaluation that you are giving? I don't know about you, but every time I do an evaluation, I think about how this will benefit me at work. Because I've learned to listen really well at work to what people are saying, to not take things personally, and also to see how I can show kindness to people, tell them what they do very well so that they feel appreciated, but also challenge them to improve in a way that's very positive for them. So doing evaluations teaches skills that really works well in other situations, whether it's work relationship or family relationships. I've also learned to listen really well when I speak to my children. Instead of just telling them how I think things should be done, I've learned to really listen well. Now, how do the other people in the room, not the speaker, benefit from an evaluation? Anyone who would like to give their opinion? Maybe Kelly, if you would like to answer that, how do other people benefit from your evaluation?
So you become like the educator, I feel, in regards to the beneficial part as well. And then people, I think there's trust involved as well. If you continue to evaluate and educate, I think that's a good start. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Definitely. And Isabel put in the chat also that they can utilize the evaluation in their future speeches. I've often got tips from an evaluation, and then immediately the next time I give a speech, then I also use that. Now the last slide, and you don't have to put that up, Troy, I'll just talk about that. Before the evaluation, you talk to people, you get the evaluation, and then after the evaluation, or even after the meeting, Troy, do you feel lonely now? Even after the evaluation, there are 3 people you can talk to. The first one is you can talk about the feedback to the evaluator. So after they've given an evaluation, you can go to them and ask them, so you noticed that, and I want you to explain to me a little bit more of how you think I can improve this. Or, wow, I never realized I'm doing this well. Tell me what you see in that, in the way that I've done my speech. Then the next one, you will also, the evaluator will be evaluated by the general evaluator. And they may also give feedback that will open up your eyes so that the evaluator may be challenged to do something differently. And that will add benefit to your evaluation and make you grow even more. And then the third person that you can also ask is your club mentor. What do you think about my speech? How do you agree with the evaluator or differ from the evaluator or the general evaluator? So there's a lot of things, a lot of aspects about an evaluation that's more than just the evaluation you get on the day. Back to you, Marlene.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was so informative. And I'm sure everyone can relate to all that Elizabeth has spoken about tonight. So really good suggestions and tips and tricks and what to look for. So thank you for that.